Welcome to the July 23rd meeting of the Capitola City Council. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Termini.
Here.
Councilmember Harlan. Here. Councilmember Votar.
Here.
Councilmember Bertrand.
Here.
Mayor Norton.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a presentation regarding the Human Care Alliance. David, are you here? Please. David and Karen. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Karen Delaney. I'm the Director of the Local Volunteer Center, and I am the proud chairperson of the Human Care Alliance, a coalition of local nonprofit health and human service organizations. And we wanted to really talk to you about two things this evening. One, first and foremost, is to say thank you for your support of community programs. You may not be aware, but we're really happy to share that this is the 30th anniversary of the founding of the Human Care Alliance. And for 30 years, Capitola has been partnering with us to make sure that people in this community have a really great array of services that help families, seniors, people with disabilities. We're really proud of your investment. And when we were thinking about how should we celebrate our 30 years, you know, what we really decided is that while it is great that we have been working together for 30 years, we really feel like now's the moment to talk about the next 30 years and how we can do more and better together. So we have put together these position papers, and we want to talk to you a little bit about what we see the issues in the future are and what we see the needs of the future are that we can, so that hopefully we can work on those in the next 30 years with as much success as the past 30 years. And I think a big picture thing is while we are really proud and happy of the amazing services we've accomplished, we feel like services alone are not going to solve the problems, that we need to continue to do excellent services, but we need to do a better job of working with our local community leaders in government and in the private sector to start addressing the root causes of problems and be more involved in policy. So we've got our 3 policy papers. I'm going to talk about the blue and the green, which are how can we make our community more economically and socially just for all residents, how can we thrive, and how can we have strong and safe neighborhoods, and Dave's going to talk about health. For economic and social justice, we are in the so-called jobless recovery. I think what we really want to talk to people about is this, that while the economy is getting better, poverty is on the rise, and this is a very expensive place to live. The poverty rate in our community when you use a livable wage index is 22%. It's one of the highest in the state. That a full-time worker, if you're working at minimum wage, you need to work 130 hours a week. 130 hours a week to afford an average 2-bedroom apartment to rent. It's not just a jobless recovery, it's a recovery that for working people makes it almost impossible to live a good life, a life that we all enjoy. The cost of living has not kept up with the cost of housing. More than half of all public assistance dollars go to people who are working full-time. And that some of the people who are working in our own public sector organizations, the people who are taking care of our kids, the people who are taking care of our elders, the people who are working in our nursing homes, about the same percentage of them have to rely on public assistance because their wages are so far below what it costs to live here. About the same percentage of them rely on public assistance to feed their families as do people who work at McDonald's. Is that really the sort of prosperity agenda that we want to have in our community? We think we could do better if we work together. We think that smart solutions that work, we know what works. If we expand support for working families so that working families can have a little bit more help with housing, with childcare to stay at work. In the Great Recession, California alone, we lost 80,000 slots for subsidized childcare. Pay people living wages. That means looking when we come to you and investing and letting us invest in wages, because our people need to have a living wage. That's how an economy thrives. But also looking at what it takes to live. In a service sector, how can people afford to live here? And you have great tools of economic development. When you're doing economic development, which you do an excellent job, are we really doing enough to make sure that the jobs we're creating, the people who work in those jobs can actually afford to live here and spend money in these local businesses? Because right now, a lot of the new jobs, they can't. So we believe in supporting working families, investing in living wage jobs, and targeted economic policies. And we hope you'll, as other decisions besides the budget come before you, that you'll explore these. Our Strong and Safe Neighborhoods policy agenda. We're blessed to be living in one of the times where crime rate, although crime is always a problem, we've got the lowest crime rate since 1962. And yet, we still have we still need stronger neighborhoods. What really weakens neighborhoods? Poverty is linked to crime. Poverty weakens neighborhoods. The huge disparity between a neighborhood is where we live, and when people can't afford to live here, it really is a problem. While median rents in California increased 20% in the last decade, median wages declined 8%. The cost of housing and the cost of living here are driving middle-class people into the working class people into the lower class, and lower-class people onto the streets. That's happening not just here, but it is happening here. And I think we could do better to prevent that. And lastly, community perceptions. That you probably hear this all the time, that people want safer streets. People want less drug abuse. People want less homelessness. People want less teens on the streets. And yet sometimes when we go out in the community together with you to try and bring solutions to bear, people also don't want services and facilities in their neighborhood. There's a lot of fear-based decision making. So we're hoping that you will work with us and we can do a better job to help people understand what really keeps their neighborhood safe and to help people make decisions based on data, not on fear or letters to the editor or whatever they're hearing on the internet. We believe that we have a great coalition of prevention-based support services. We believe that if we strengthen housing and make it more accessible, that makes our neighbors strong and safer. We believe if we do more with community education and engagement, we will all be safer. We know that we know that we're going to partner with you to continue with these services, and we hope that you'll reach out to us when you have neighborhood meetings or policy issues coming before you that are within this agenda where we can try and work with our networks to get a better solution. I also want to point out in each of these, there's a list of Human Care Alliance organizations that you're already supporting that are your partners at work in driving each of these agendas. And I would turn it over to the great Dave Bianchi to talk about how we can make our people more healthy.
Thanks, Karen. Though I'm currently director for a community mental health agency, I've also been the director for an acute hospital and a skilled nursing facility. So I guess I've had a full view of the healthcare spectrum from birth to beyond. So what we're talking here is about health equity, because if you don't have your health, all these other problems that Karen's talked about can seem insurmountable if you have a health deficit of some kind. And the idea of health equity is that as a community, we want to ensure that all residents have equal access to health care, healthy food, and other services essential to healthy lives. 1 in 4 county residents rely on Medi-Cal for health services, and many low-income seniors, families, and people with disabilities face health care gaps that put their health and financial security at risk. There's a growing senior population as the baby boom generation ages. There are low-income residents who continue to face critical health care gaps in dental care, mental health treatment, and senior care. and too many people still lack access to food, safe housing, and other basic needs. There are 52% of Santa Cruz County seniors served by Meals on Wheels live in poverty. 53% of people with mental health issues in America receive no treatment, and only 58% of our county residents have dental insurance. So how do your nonprofit partners work with you to provide access and care? We do that by preventing health problems or treating them when they're still manageable, so we can reduce costs and improve the quality of life. We coordinate amongst each other for our services so there's more effective treatment, and we work towards safe housing and healthy food, which are an integral part of health equity. Some examples of solutions that have worked include moving services upstream to support programs that reach people before they're in crisis, support services for seniors that allow them to age in place, and eliminating food insecurity for children, which improves school performance, behavior, cognitive development, and health while decreasing obesity. All of these solutions involve cost savings to individuals and the community. Our alliance is challenging our members, our partners, and our funders to work together and learn together, to use all our resources wisely, and continue to make a difference in individual lives while also changing the community. To move toward a health equity, a more equitable health system, and a better system of care, we're recommending that you continue to invest in education, prevention, and early intervention for high-risk populations, that we all take action to promote equal access to health care and treatment, healthy food, and opportunities to exercise, and we all try to ensure that members of our community have access to basic food, shelter, and sanitation. We certainly appreciate the ongoing support you've given us to make progress toward these goals that we've outlined, and you've done this year after year for Capitola residents, for which we're thankful. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Karen, any comments or discussion here? You know, we're going to discuss later on this evening, we are going to discuss our housing element. And so it is our guideline for the next year on how we're going to treat affordable housing. So if get a copy of it, if nothing else, and you can keep up to date with us on that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
So, excuse me. There. Oh, hi, Karen. David, you did mention aging in place. So, as you know, I'm very interested in that effort. So, I think things like working around aging and enabling people to stay in their homes is sort of a new direction. There's many different services that are part of the Human Alliance that contribute to making that possible. But a way to unify that effort, I still think, needs to be brought forward to the community. Do you have any comments on that?
I really do, and I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things, sometimes we don't toot our own horns enough. And so 4 years ago, the Federal Health Services Administration sent a survey team to Santa Cruz County because when they looked at per beneficiary spending nationwide for people on Medicare, which is extremely elderly people, they noticed that Santa Cruz County had the second lowest per beneficiary spending rate in the state for hospitalized and institutional in the country for institutional health care, and they wanted to see why. And when they came out here, what was really interesting in the meetings is it became crystal clear that while other communities had been not funding non-mandated senior serving programs, because of community programs and investments like yours, we had this safety net. And so these modest local interventions had the net effect of keeping people in their homes longer. The only way we have to measure it is when the person who's the payer of last resort says, wow, you guys are doing an awesome job. And so I think it was interesting because at the time it was hard to even get the media involved because it seems so nebulous. So I think that we're already way ahead of many other communities who frankly have cut down or closed a lot of the services that we have open, and that gives us a leg up for more neighborhood-based strategies because the Capitola City Council and our other local partners have kept a safety net in place through bad economic times. We actually can talk about things like how do we get ready for aging in place as opposed to being like we're 3 steps ahead of everybody else. We do need to do more. People in that age demographic of over 80 are the largest growing percentage of population. In our community, that percentage of the population is going to double about every 5 years for the next 20 or 30 years. And that's kind of why we want to get ahead of this and say, it's great what we're doing, and let's work together and have some new conversations too about, what more can we do? And let's reach out and engage. It doesn't have to just be about community programs. So things like the villages and stuff is great.
Yeah, and I appreciate the fact you brought that up, because there are still gaps in, for instance, from a mental health perspective. We can't send counselors into homes. We don't have a mechanism for that, or the payment structures don't support that. So we're looking at different technologies. Fortunately, as the baby boom generation ages, they're more technologically adept. We've all been beaten into it by our grandkids at a minimum. So I think we're looking at other ways to support people in their homes that may not even be able to come out and access an office-based service for certain of our services.
Excuse me.
Oh, and just in general, I think one of the reasons we wanted to make policy and not money the focus of all our budget presentations this year is to remind folks that, we're here all the time, not just at budget season, and we really have, in 30 years, we've learned a lot, and we work together all the time, so we can bring some creative solutions to the table on any of these issues.
So, one more comment?
Go ahead.
Okay. So as you want to expand the policy discussion to include us, which I would like to see, and you mentioned community-based improvements or decisions to involve the community. So I would welcome that possibility as you decide how to include others in this policy decision formulation, because things are changing, and that's what you're talking about. As we age, that's going to be a major factor, I think.
Yes. And actually, policy is in your hand. What we're hoping to do is bring expertise and help people look down the road at some issues or things like your housing element, like the mix or economic development. You guys are really the policy decision makers. We just want to be your allies in that.
David, Karen, thank you for your time. Appreciate
Thank you.
it. We have a presentation of 2 certificates of appreciation. Linda Smith and David Shock, would you come up to the front, please? Okay, thank you. These are called certificates of appreciation. Isn't that what the Tin Man got at Wizard of Oz?
Yeah. You got a heart in there?
But the certificate of appreciation is good too.
Oh, that's grand. Thank you very much.
So, David, you actually were with on the historical committee museum board for 9 years. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Good.
Went fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you created history as well as
Yeah, left it behind.
That's a good answer.
And Linda, you were there since 2007. 7 years. Great. I'll never forget you in your baseball outfit. That was a great outfit. You guys got to do that every once a month. Walk around with those things on.
All right, Frank, that's you.
We can do that. And you'll still stay on our planning commission, is that correct?
Oh, yeah. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still a volunteer at the museum, and I'm still going to be doing a lot of stuff with the museum, but it's time to hand off the gavel, if you will. And we've got some new people that will be joining the board, I guess, in a little bit, hopefully. It'll be good.
Thank you.
This means you have extra time, both of you, right?
No.
Extra time. Oh, yeah. We don't know where that comes from.
Oh, okay. But that's why you do so much.
Well, we do because we really feel strongly about Capitola and volunteering for the city, because it is very much a part of how you know that you live here.
Cool. Well, thank you both for dedication to Capitola. Can we have a report on closed session, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Norton, members of the City Council. There were 2 items on this evening's closed session agenda. One was potential litigation, and the other was a liability claim involving the claim of Lindsay Dewar. The latter is on your consent agenda, but there was no reportable action.
Thank you, Tony. There is no additional materials received for this agenda. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Jim? Being none, we move to public comment. This is a time when the public can comment on any issue that is not on the agenda for this evening. Please step forward to the front of the room, and you'll have 3 minutes to voice yourself. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff. My name is Richard Lippy. I live on Monterey Avenue. And I'd just like to ask tonight if it's possible to get a status update on the skate park at McGregor Park.
Yes, you can.
Okay, but could I get an answer?
Yes. I will get you an answer. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
It'll come around.
Well, I'm saying it'll come around?
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Next few minutes, we'll take care of that. Does anyone else like to join to address the council? Steve's not in here right now, is he? Okay. We will wait till Steve Jesper comes back in the room. Steve?
Pretty good, Mayor.
Thank you.
You envisioned him and he appeared.
Thank you.
That's fine. Yes.
Could you give us an update on the McGregor skateboard park?
So we continued to do some soil sampling of the surrounding area this time to see what the background arsenic levels are. I know they were taking samples today. We should have results by early next week, which will be able to tell us what better picture of what the background levels are in comparison to what we have on that site, which will then help us identify the appropriate remediation that we need to do.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Wait, while you're up there, Steve, if I could, just piggyback on that. Is there any pressure that we can apply or we can get involved in with regard to the county in easing this process at all?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
we're working all the angles we can at this point. They're the one that suggested we do the additional background testing so that we can try and raise the background levels there. They are working with us.
Good.
I think it's just a matter of coming up with a plan that's workable for both them and us.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council on any issues not on the agenda this evening? Staff?
I would just like to remind everybody that Wharf to Wharf is coming up this weekend, and we're going to have road closures here in town that everyone's familiar with on Sunday until 1 o'clock this Sunday afternoon.
Thank you, Jimmy. Council?
I have one. Thanks, you took my Wharf to Wharf comment away, but that's okay. You get one too. Just stay home until noon. Just don't leave your house. Or walk to the finish line. I think it's apparent to all of us that CIP projects are foremost on the citizens' minds right now. And I think that we need to see what we can do for our Public Works Department. They're strapped. We have one of those odd times we have a lot of money, and we don't seem to be able to build anything. Speaking of the county, it couldn't hurt for us to start putting pressure on some projects the county has been holding us back on. We have a couple of projects that have been waiting for a couple of years just because the county has a road program coming up, or a sanitation project, or some, pavement breaking event. We need to get something done. We're not doing anything right now. So perhaps at the next meeting, we could have some kind of an extended report. We can brainstorm. We can figure out how the council can help Public Works and the city manager get these things off the ground. Thank you.
Like that attitude, Mike?
Yep. I second that completely.
Stephanie?
No.
I think Jamie and I will be going on tomorrow afternoon to meet with the FAA regarding the jet noise over our community. There seems to be an issue with almost everyone out there that lives in this area. And so we'll be meeting with them in the afternoon, and we will report back to the community after that meeting and what results we are. We're feeling positive. We just have to, we have the right people coming to talk to us. We have our state representatives are behind us and with us in that meeting, and we're hopeful that they will be listening to us. Okay?
We have some appointments for commissions. Is that correct, Sue?
Yes, we do. And as you recall, and at the July 11th meeting, Stephanie Kirby was reappointed to the museum board, leaving 2 vacant seats. And we received 6 applications, and the museum board met on July 8th, and they're recommending Pam Greninger and Kathleen Church for appointments.
Is there a motion by the council? Okay, definitely. Let's make it a motion. Make a motion.
I approve I approve the recommendation for the historic board.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Discussion, Michael? You okay? Would our applicants like to come up and say anything to us? Would you chance? Pam, please.
First of all, I want to
Can
thank...
you state your name so we all know who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hello, I'm Pam Greninger, Capitola resident, former city clerk. It's hard to believe I've been retired for 3.5 years, and I got a little nudge from someone who said, oh, wouldn't you like to be on the museum board? So anyway, I thought, oh, you know, I really love that organization that has done so much for our community. And with my history of being on the council secretary and keeping a record of the history for quite a while, I thought it would be a great opportunity to get back involved. And so anyway, I'm looking forward to that. I want to thank Linda and David for all their work. They have been just amazing, and it's so nice that you have recognized them this evening as they step down, although I know neither one of them are really stepping down too far, which is so wonderful about our community. But anyway, I want to thank the board for recommending me, and I'm looking forward to getting back involved.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Kathleen, please.
Well, I'm not going to say very much. I just want to thank the board for bringing me on board, and I look forward to working with the council and especially the museum. So thanks.
Thank you, Kathleen. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Welcome aboard. We move to the consent calendar. All items in the consent calendar will be voted on one motion by the council. If there's anyone in the public who would like to pull any item on the consent agenda, please come forward right now. We'll pull the item. Being none, is there any items that want to be pulled by the council?
Questions about checks?
Okay.
Letter or no?
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, good.
Mark's here, I think.
Mark? We just put in an ADA drinking fountain. I was just wondering where that is. $3,400.
That was at the Jade Street Community Center. It involved quite a bit of plumbing and drywall work and carpentry work. So.
Okay, so I was okay. Then since you're here, I bet you know we just removed and replaced the metal beam guardrails, and that was about $13,700 for that.
So that was on the corner of McGregor, right after Park Avenue. They had been taken out in a series of accidents, and then we added one up here on in the Pacifico parking lot.
Okay. And then the tree issue on Park Avenue, are we having trees falling down again, or is that just maintenance? So
it's maintenance. There had been some trees that had died in the drought that we removed before they fell.
Okay, good. Proactive.
Steve, while you're up there, speaking of trees, reminded me, there's been a lot of talk about the trees on Grand Avenue. There's some eucalyptus up there that neighbors are concerned about because they're close to the power lines. Is there any way for us to contact PG&E, because it's usually their responsibility?
Yeah, I can do that, certainly.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I will vote no on one item on the check register. That's the Santa Cruz Regional 911 Center. Thank you.
You've never done that before.
I do it every time.
Every
I
time.
don't.
It's trademark.
Okay, we move to general government public hearings. Consider approving agreements with the Housing Authority of Santa Cruz County and Adam Ashby Group for administration of the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, funding housing rehabilitation and homeowners assistance programs for an amount not to exceed $54,359 and $25,580 respectively. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. Just by way of background, the city has historically funded many of its affordable housing programs through redevelopment housing set-aside funds, which, as you well know, was eliminated in 2011. And among the casualties of our affordable housing programs was our housing rehabilitation and homeownership assistance programs. Last year, we were awarded a $500,000 CDBG grant to enable us to reinstate those programs. And it's our goal to initiate and launch those programs on August 1st of this year. Once we spend 50% of the new grants, we would be eligible to submit for a new application, and it's our hope to kind of keep these programs rolling by having new grants once the monies do expire. So to administer the program, historically we've contracted with the Housing Authority. They're uniquely qualified and set up to administer these types of affordable housing programs. Their responsibilities under the proposed contract would be to prepare program documents, do eligibility screening for applicants, performing home inspections, and overseeing loan closings and other miscellaneous tasks. The proposed contract value for that work would be $54,358, and those monies would come out of the CDBG grants. There would be no direct city expense associated with it. The Adams Ashby Group, we put out a request for proposals to 13 firms that do affordable housing CDBG grant work. Adams Ashby was the only responsive proposal that we received. They are experts in community development block grant and affordable housing work, and they're currently working in Capitola. They're doing our ongoing home monitoring of the Bay Avenue senior apartments, so they do have familiarity with Capitola and the community. Under this contract, their responsibilities would entail program monitoring and reporting, preparing and submitting financial reports to the state, and doing grant closeout work and providing staff with technical assistance as needed. The value of that contract is proposed to be a little over $25,000, again funded through the grant administration allowance. Just for the benefit of the viewers at home, and maybe some of you, if you don't recall, some of the highlights of the housing rehabilitation program. The program offers 3% simple interest loan for income-eligible households to complete needed home repairs. There is a maximum $75,000 loan amount, which is repaid upon the sale of a home or the transfer of the deed. Those are secured by a 30-year loan term. And single-family homes, condominiums, townhomes, mobile homes, all eligible to participate in the program. Some of the allowable improvements that we commonly have seen in the past are things like roofing, plumbing, electrical, flooring, accessibility improvements, as well as weather efficiency, water efficiency upgrades, and even solar panels could be financed through this program. The program also does have a grant allowance for up to $7,500. They would be eligible for senior citizens, disabled folks, or very low-income households. The eligibility criteria, applicants would need to be located in Capitola. They need to meet our income and assets limits. Any repair work that they would like done would have to comply with all applicable building codes. And the borrower has to occupy the home. They couldn't fix it up and then rent it out and use it as a source of income. This should say, pardon me, the Home Ownership Assistance Program. The program highlights are that it provides down payment assistance for income-eligible applicants. There's a maximum $100,000 loan amount, again repaid upon sale or transfer with a 3% simple interest. We do offer a 40-year loan term to make those payments a little bit more manageable. Again, single-family, condominiums, townhomes, mobile homes, all eligible properties. And there is a maximum purchase price of $475,000 to be able to participate in the program. Similar to the rehab program, eligibility criteria, they have to be Capitola residents, meet the income and asset limits. The mortgages that they enter into have to be conventional fixed-rate mortgages. They do need to provide pre-qualification letters with their application, and there is an occupancy requirement with this program as well. The income and asset limits that I've been referring to are shown up here on the screen. The numbers across the top are the size of the household, generally ranging from $55,000 to $91,000, again, depending on the size of the household. And the assets limit complies with previous council direction that we've received related to our inclusionary housing ordinance and regulatory agreements with some of our mobile homes that we've assisted financially in the past. For folks that are interested in participating, we have developed a waiting list. Right now we have about 17 people on those waiting lists. We're going to administer the program on a first-come, first-served basis. If people are interested, they can contact either the Housing Authority, who will be administering the programs, or Planning Community Development staff, and we'd be happy to help them as well. We have posted some program information on the website, and once the application materials are final, we'll also put that on the website so that people have easy access to them. So our recommendation this evening is to approve the proposed contracts with the Housing Authority and the Adams-Ashby Group to administer the CDBG-funded affordable housing programs. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Questions of staff?
And just to underscore this, this payment can be taken from grant funding.
Correct. It's all grant funded.
Was our grant in the last year, was all that money used?
That's this grant we're talking about now. It's taken about 6 months or so to get all the documentation acceptable to the state. It's ready to launch now. We're working with Tony to finalize some documents.
Okay. So what percent of the money that's coming to them is administrative, goes to administrative?
I believe it's about 20% is allowed to be used for administration, a maximum.
Well, that's 20%.
Using about 10. Right?
Yeah, there's going to be some. We've used some staff time that we're billing towards the grant as well.
Okay.
I thought it was 17 on page 101.
That could be correct. I know it was approximately 20%. 17.
Is the work done by Adams-Ashby, is that considered as processing cost or administration?
Yeah, it's administration costs covered under the grant.
So I'm not clear. Is the County of Santa Cruz administering the grant, and the Ashby Group is also the overseeing group that
So the Housing Authority, they'll be doing most of the work with the applicants. When they come in, they'll be going out to the home, doing the inspections, working on the loan documents, making sure that the contractors perform to the contract. Adams-Ashby Group will be doing a lot of the work behind the scenes with state HCD to make sure the city's in compliance with all our grant requirements, doing closeout documents. If the state decides to monitor, they would lead that effort, and to provide technical assistance for me on some of the questions that we invariably get on these types of programs.
So the administration is much higher than 17% then, if you add Ashby in there.
Well, I think the combined value of those two contracts is in the neighborhood of $75,000. That's, I think, within the neighborhood of 17%. I believe it's below. Yeah.
Okay. 415,000 is available. 85,000 would be 17%, and
Right.
it sounds like you're about 75,000 with everything.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And now you had some staff time in there, which is probably the rest of it.
Right.
Okay. Is there any member of the public who would like to address us on this issue? Please step forward. Being none, back to council.
I was wondering about the professional services, not to exceed whatever, 54, which 11%, and that's a lot. So I'm basically trying to get a better understanding of what they're doing. That's all.
The Housing Authority or Adams-Ashby? Or
I'm
both?
not too concerned about them, but the Housing Authority, yes.
So the Housing Authority does all the work. So we'll give them our waiting list, and if the first person on the list wants to do a rehabilitation program, they'll meet with them. They'll determine whether or not they're income eligible. They'll provide us with that information. They'll work with the homeowner to select a contractor to define the scope of work. They will help put a contract together with the selected contractor, oversee the work, sign off on the work once it's completed, and then do a lot of associated paperwork that's necessary with these federal and state grants. There's a lot of paperwork that's involved.
Okay. In terms of monitoring, there's supposed to be monitoring, like on page 80. So how do we do the monitoring? How do we feel assured that they're doing the job we want them to do, representing us? And how do we know that the clients, our citizens here in Capitola, are getting the services they feel they need?
You know, historically, we've worked very closely with the Housing Authority. They're currently administering our security deposit program. So they've done this work for us as well as a lot of other agencies. You know, to a large extent, it's kind of a turnkey program. We give them the documents, the guidelines, they administer it, they coordinate with us, but by and large, there's not a lot of city staff time that's required to oversee the work that they're doing. Now, if there's a problem, certainly we'd get more involved at that stage.
So we do have communication with the people that are applying for the loans and the assistance?
Yes.
Okay. And there was something in here about records I was trying to understand. So they hold all the records. We don't hold the records, right?
That's correct. We'd have access to any of the records that we need. There are retention policies that they're subject to, just like we are.
So for determining what's going on, we have to go to them to get the records to determine what's going on.
Yeah, and you know, we're aware of when loans are granted. We have to approve them. You know, they'll give us a notification that an applicant is submitted for a project, what the project is, the cost, you know, their income level and asset levels. We review it and then give the final okay to go ahead with the work.
And who are our monitors from this city?
That would be myself and Carolyn Flynn.
Okay.
We could ask for quarterly reports, Jacques, if you're concerned about it, and they could give us quarterly reports on how many clients they have and what they're doing for those clients and how much money they're spending.
The only reason for my questions, I want to know that we're actually doing the due diligence, and you've answered my questions.
Thank you.
We've been partners with the Housing Authority for over 20 years, I think.
Yeah, they're good folks to work with. My experience with them has been
It's
completely
something the city
positive.
does not want to do that work. That's not work that we were very good at.
Yeah. No, you don't have the bandwidth to do that kind of detail. I understand that, and I did go through this fairly much in detail. I just want to hear from you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So is there a motion by council?
So moved. Second.
A motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay, we move to general government item B. Consider request to initiate public review and refer the draft housing element update to the State Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD. Rich?
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Again, by way of background, the housing element, as you're probably aware, is one of the 7 mandated elements of our general plan. Unlike the other elements, though, it is subject to state-mandated update cycles and has to be certified by the State Department of Housing and Community Development. Our current housing element was adopted by the Council in February 2010, subsequently certified by HCD in April of that year, and our deadline to adopt a new housing element update is December 31st, 2015. There have been a number of significant legislative and policy changes since our last housing element update. Notably, Senate Bill 375 was passed in 2008. That gave some favorable changes to housing element law. Notably, it extended the update cycle from 4 to 8 years, so we don't have to go through this on an 8-year basis now. However, it does impose a penalty if you miss your deadline. You're required to go on an abbreviated 4-year update schedule, so there's a little more impetus to get it done on a timely manner. Again, redevelopment, of course, was terminated in 2011, and that eliminated our primary source for many of our affordable housing programs. Fortunately, HED does recognize the bind that's put California cities and counties in, and they're not holding it against agencies for having lower funding amounts for many of its programs. Finally, in 2012, the State Department of Housing and Community Development adopted a streamlined update process. Essentially, what this allows us to do is to go through and just update those sections of the existing housing element that have relevant changes. We no longer have to do a comprehensive update. Results in a little lower cost and a quicker turnaround time to complete the update process. Unlike the legislative and policy changes, there hasn't been a lot of change to Capitola's housing stock or the housing condition. It's remained relatively stable over the past 7 years. Over that time, we have constructed approximately 111 new or replacement housing units. I would note that in the staff report, I mentioned that the 13 secondary dwelling units were included in the number that was incorrect. It was actually 98 plus 13 for a total of 111. The housing element is often driven by the regional housing needs allocation process. This is the process where the state allocates the region's share of fair housing that they must provide. Once the state sets that, the AMBAG would distribute that number to the local cities and counties, and then the city is obligated to demonstrate that it can provide adequate housing sites to accommodate that need. Not necessarily build them, but that there's available sites to provide the affordable housing need. The good news in terms of the RHNA numbers is it's exactly the same as the last housing cycle. 143 was our number during the last cycle, and that remains the same with just some minor changes to the income levels. Also favorable for us was we only built 8 units that were accounted for in the Bay Avenue senior apartments, so we still have capacity under our old opportunity sites to accommodate the new RHNA. We don't have to rezone, we don't have to find any new opportunity sites. That's often the most challenging part of a housing element. We're lucky not to have that situation this year. Some of the changes that we are making in the housing element update, we're going to provide updated demographic information, provide some information on completed and pending projects, as well as our housing constraints analysis to reflect any new and revised city ordinances that we've done since the past cycle, things like the emergency shelter ordinance, reasonable accommodation, transitional supportive housing. And there are 2 program changes that we are proposing. The first is elimination of all the rent control programs and policies to reflect the fact that it was repealed by the city in 2011. And we also have a privately initiated request to eliminate the condo conversion policy. The condo conversion policy is currently in the housing element as Program 2.4. This requires the city to maintain and enforce its current condo conversion ordinance with the goal of preserving rental housing. The condo conversion ordinance resides in our subdivision ordinance and prohibits condo conversions for apartment buildings which have 5 or more units and were built prior to 1970 or after 1979. Ordinance also requires dedication of on-site affordable units and payment of inclusionary housing fees. Should the council decide to amend the policy in the housing element, there would be no effect on the ordinance until such time that we amended the ordinance itself. The council did review a conceptual review request from the Antigua and Crest Apartments in 2012. They had asked the council to relax the ordinance to allow them to convert to condominiums. However, that ordinance is embedded in a number of our other related ordinances, and as well as the general plan housing element and the LCP. And it would have triggered a need to amend the general plan housing element as well as the LCP. At that time, the council declined the request to amend the condo conversion ordinance until the housing element update was completed. And since that time, Antigua has submitted an application which remains active, but it's incomplete and just sitting on a shelf at the moment. Next steps for the housing element update, if we do get your authorization to initiate public review, we'll refer the document to the state for a 60-day review period. We'll concurrently put it out for public review and comment with the goal of having adoption hearings in October and November of this year and to send it off to HCD for certification ahead of the deadline and hopefully receive final certification in the early part of 2016. The Planning Commission recommended that the council authorize staff to release the housing element for public review and to refer it to HCD. They also recommended that we retain a generalized condo conversion policy in the housing element, but that we reword it to be less specific so that if we amend it in the future that we wouldn't also have to amend the housing element. Staff concurs with the Planning Commission recommendation, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Mhm. It's my understanding this will come back to the Planning Commission and to the council for final approval at completion.
That's correct.
That's correct. Questions of staff?
How many consultants are involved in this?
One.
Because I saw that the one that I received had the old housing element date scratched out and a new one put in. I will do that for you, free of charge. We have so few changes. What's the need for a consultant on this?
There's a lot of work involved to update the demographic information. You know, particularly in a strike and underline format, it looks like it's pretty straightforward, and it is. I mean, compared to most housing element updates, this one's really easy. But nonetheless, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to dig up that demographic information, and there's been some coordination with HCD up to date too that they've done. And I would point out it hasn't been a big ticket item. I think our contract was around $32,000. So.
Thank you.
As part of the review process, I'd like to see a presentation from AMBAG around the arena numbers. I think the public has been wondering what this arena number is for a long time and how and why Capitola seems to have to be responding to that. I know it's a state-driven thing and AMBAG is responding to that directive, but it would be good for public education. The other thing I'm very concerned about is the condominium conversion issue. I'd like to see an analysis from your department on what that would mean for Capitola. How many rental units are we talking about potentially? The effect on cost of housing to the general population, basically the rise in price of adjacent homes and others that, that might be affected by that. So I'd like to see that analysis so we have a better understanding what that's about. Thank you.
Is there any members of the public who would like to address us on this issue? Okay, we return to council. I got a small statement to make here is that the state of California and HCD and along through AMBAG, who happens to be the middleman on this, has put requirements on communities to produce housing, both new and affordable housing within our communities. But it puts no requirements on utility companies to also help us in doing that. Right now we have a situation where water department, which is the water purveyor for all of Capitola, has a fee of approximately $26,000 and a water hookup fee requiring a separate meter for our secondary units. While we're required to put a secondary unit, they make it unaffordable for us to put it in. And knowing this world and the way it's been come down for the last 2 years, it's detrimental to us providing secondary units, which is the only affordable units that we can really build within our community today. And I don't know why we couldn't step a little harder ourselves and go back to the water purveyor and get them to take a reasonable stance on helping us in providing affordable housing within our community. And $26,000 makes it unaffordable, and that we will not see secondary units in our community unless we find a way to make it affordable to do that. And this is one of the first. That would be one step that we can take in making more affordable units here. And why would a utility not be responsible as we are as a community to provide housing within our community?
I don't think Rich could answer that, but
well, I'm hoping Tony could help us a little bit
I was
here.
hanging it out there.
Well, I think the short answer is that you know, the housing element is a required element by the legislature, and the water district does not have the same type of restrictions. I know most water agencies consider the ADU as part of a single-family residence, but it's not exclusive. Many require additional water connections or an evaluation of the number of fixtures relative to the size of the connection.
Their justification to us when we discussed this with them is that they have no way to track how much water the back house uses compared to the front house. And we'll tell you, if you own both houses, you know how much water is being used there, so you're conscious of it yourself. So, you know, it's real difficult for me to justify that not issuing a single meter for houses just because they don't know how much water a front unit to a back house unit's used. You know?
From an engineering standpoint, I think you would base it on the number of fixtures in the that were attached to the service connection and not on the number of dwelling units that were on a specific piece of property. Or if you wanted to be more precise, although it would be harder to measure in terms of connection fees, you would base it on the number of residents that the house is capable, or that the property is capable of accommodating. That does not work as a practical matter because you can't anticipate that before a place is occupied. So again, it's a matter of policy. The Water District has a policy that's not dictated by state law, and so is not similarly constrained as the city of Capitola is.
Thank you. Kathy?
I have just a couple of questions and comments, unless someone wants to go first.
Go ahead.
Okay. I thought it was a really good document because it was easy to read, because it did include the old with the new, and I appreciated that. We haven't really done that very much in the past, but I really like that. I have a question on chapter. It's difficult to follow also because they're not pages, they're chapters. So chapter 4-29. Down at the bottom of the page, that last paragraph.
Right.
The Santa Cruz Water District, Soquel Creek Water District are jointly pursuing seawater desal as a supplemental water source. Currently, the desal project is in environmental review. Is that true? Or is it true that on the next page, the city and Soquel Creek are pursuing a community involvement project to continue evaluating water supplies, and it's on hold, and it says it's on hold. The project is currently on hold. Is it on hold or in environmental review?
I think the environmental review statement was actually from the old document. It didn't get struck out.
Okay.
It's on hold, so
Okay,
we'll fix that. Thank you.
Yeah, just a minor question. Okay, and then on chapter 6-9, policy 2.2, protect the affordability of existing mobile home parks. Capitola has 8 mobile home parks. 5 have now been converted to resident-controlled ownership. And the city will continue to work with the residents and owners of the remaining 3 rental parks to identify realistic plans to transition from rental park model in ways that will protect the financial investment of both the existing residents and the park owners to help preserve, to the extent possible, the affordable housing stock represented by these mobile home units. Wishful thinking. I mean, we're talking about Cabrillo, Castle, and Surf and Sand. What are we talking about here? And is this really accurate? Or is this what we're doing? Is this? I mean, it's very general and it's very nice. I like keeping the language in here because you never know what might happen in the future. Maybe we could help Castle out in the future. Maybe we could help Surf and Sand, but I think there's sort of we're past that. So I don't know. I just want to make sure this was as accurate as possible, considering what we're dealing with right now.
We actually we solved the Castle problem. Remember, we helped a nonprofit acquire a Castle, so
Right.
we're just down to 2. So that's definitely inaccurate.
Changes
just,
to 2.
yeah, without a doubt. And I think it's good language to include there for the remaining 2. They may be the 2 most challenging parks in the city, but nevertheless,
Let's
if
leave
the
them in there
arises.
just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just change it to 2. Okay. Okay. 2.2.B down at the bottom of that page, mobile home resident acquisition projects. Program provides matching funds from the city for financial assistance to mobile home park residents or participating nonprofits to facilitate their acquisition or conversion efforts. Do we have any money for this yet, and are we still thinking about this, or should we change this language?
There's nothing budgeted. There's no money set aside necessarily for that purpose. I think we thought that leaving the program in there should another mobile home park want to convert, and we could find a grant program to help fund it, that we would do so.
Yeah, I mean, MPROP money is always a bit, it's out there as a possible program, so good. I like leaving it in there because you never know, if some miracle could happen in the future and we could help another park. Okay, on page 621. daycare. Hmm. Could we, for policy 3.109 down there at the bottom, investigate and encourage development of a variety of housing options, do we want to add in there co-housing? I'm familiar with the co-housing project in Santa Cruz. It just was completed, one of Barry Swenson's project across the street from the fire department behind the Greek church. It's wonderful. If you haven't had a chance to go in there, go in there. And you know, lots of people from all over the county move there for that particular purpose. They have, each of them has, it's like a co-op, they all have to participate and have a job, have a committee they have to be on, and they all work together, they all know each other. It is wonderful. It's a really neat place. They have 3 floors, elevators, underground parking, guest bedroom. They have, I think, a musician from Korea Music Festival staying there now. They have had someone from the Shakespeare Festival maybe stayed there, and they bring the arts in. Anyway, it's, if you take a look at it, and we may want to, at some point, you know, just add that language in there, so just keep it in mind, because it's a new concept, and there's one in Aptos, and there's one up in the valley somewhere, and it's really neat. They're not cheap, but they're cheaper than a single-family house, and you have that security of being around other people, and in the case of this one downtown, you're right within, you don't need a car, you're within walking distance of everything you would want or need, but there is parking there. So if you haven't gone there, I'll be glad to take you and show it to you. It's a really wonderful project. It's co-housing. They're privately owned, and I don't know who operates them. I'm not sure who operates it, what kind of management they have, but it's very, very nice. It's a new concept.
You have to be on a committee with your neighbors?
Yeah.
I could define that in many ways.
It's a stretch. You know, it's not for everybody.
Just checking.
Well, we have the new Brighton one up here at the end of the park.
Yeah, I know, that's one. I haven't been in that one, but that's one.
No, I've been in that one. It's pretty good.
Great. Okay, continuing on to appendices 26 at the back. I think last time we talked about this, we said we were going to take out names and just put in addresses, because even though we'd like to say it's the Newman Apartments, everybody knows the Newmans. In 5 or 10 years, people aren't going to know who the Newmans are. So we should, even though we should honor them, we could honor them in some other way probably. But we probably should take the names out, and we should take Darman's out. I thought we talked about that last time. Just put the address in there, because that's more descriptive. So that's on those next couple of pages. There's some names of those things, and there's. Do we have a date when we think we're going to get these housing monies? We're going to start this program. I know we've been waiting for it for a while.
The monies are available, so we can start spending them now.
Great, because I know we were having to wait.
Yeah.
I think that's all that I have right now. I think this was really, really good, and it's. I think we should just continue to look for opportunity sites. There's probably more. There's probably some other creative opportunities that are there with combining the commercial buildings and residential, like we talked about for many years. There's probably more of those we could think about, and squeeze in other little places that wouldn't be obtrusive to the neighborhood, but might work a little bit to get our numbers up a little bit. Thanks, that's all.
Thank you.
I noticed, Richard, we didn't bring up much any issues about in the general plan. We were talking about Stephanie had mentioned the residential commercial mix along the 41st Avenue corridor. Mm-hmm. The only 2 projects I saw in here was the Darmas building and the Chinese restaurant area. There was nothing brought out about the 41st Avenue corridor. Is that something in the future that we'll be looking towards? Is that?
I think we could. You know, the reason we really didn't look for more opportunity sites because we didn't need them, and it's often contentious to upzone a lot of these places and add more density to it. Mm-hmm. So since we had the capacity, we kind of kept the status quo.
Okay. Is there any interest with those 2 property owners to do anything with those properties?
Not that I'm aware of.
What's happening on 38th?
38th Avenue, the permit that was approved a couple of years ago by the council for the senior housing facility has expired. We did receive an application a week and a half ago from a new applicant who would like to propose, I believe it's 11 or 12 single-family homes on that site. So you'll be seeing that application in the next couple
What
of
do you
months.
do with all the stuff that was there?
It's gone.
I know.
Is that?
I know.
Oh,
A
you
lot
had
of stuff there. A
arrangements?
lot of stuff there. Where did it all go?
They went to Oakland.
Well, like Gray Bears got some. So he made a lot of efforts to get that, given to good people.
Good.
He talked to Repurpose. They didn't want any, but Gray Bear, they came in with a couple of trucks, I think.
Good.
What's the plan review process? How are we going to engage the public on this?
On the 38th Avenue project?
No, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm switching back to the housing element.
Housing element, we did have a public workshop, I want to say it was in May. Not real well attended, but I think that was more a product of not having a lot of change, nothing that worked people up than it was, not getting the word out.
So we'll probably revisit that.
There's no intention to have another public workshop at this point.
Okay. So for the actual public review, it'd just be planning and city council. That's what you're anticipating at this time?
Correct. I mean, we'll put it out on the website. We'll notify a lot of our affordable housing partners, community groups that are out there, our neighboring agencies, try to solicit their input again. And then also, in response to your previous comment regarding doing some analysis of the condo conversion policy, what effect it would have, I did want to reiterate that we're not proposing any change to the ordinance itself. Modification of the housing element program would not change the current prohibition on condo conversions. There is an application in-house. Should they decide to proceed to amend that ordinance, that would be a requirement of them to do that analysis at their expense. So I did want to point that out to make sure you didn't want us to do that work for them.
Let's just open the public. Any member of the public who would like to address us on the housing element? Okay, being none, we turn to council for deliberation. The staff recommendation is to pass this on to HCD for review and coming back to the planning commission after public input.
I just have one question first. Do you think you could find out how many people on 41st Avenue at the 3-story development there are renters and owners? And I mean, are we really? How many people really that own it live there? Are we serving the purpose for which it was built, or were they bought as investments because they were a great price and now they're being rented out? I'd just be curious to know that.
Yeah, I can put an inquiry in. I can tell you that the inclusionary units that are there are all occupied, at least the last I heard, and those are all owner-occupied units. But I'll.
Very many of them. There's only 4 or something like that.
I believe there was 8.
Or that many?
7
or 8, yeah.
I believe that their HOA has limitations on the number of units that can be rented, if you'll recall, and presumably they would self-police that pretty well. But we can check in with them.
I'm just curious. No rush.
We did. We put that in the condition of approval of that project, I think. Okay. Direction from council here.
Move staff recommendation. Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we move to the last item on the agenda, which is a report on construction bids for the Rispin Perry Path Parkway improvements. Steve?
So you should have the amended report handed out and given out earlier. Represents we received 3 bids on the project yesterday. The low bid was from Earthworks Paving here in Capitola. The bid in the amount of $114,429. That was about 10% over the engineer's estimate, so it's certainly within the amount we have budgeted for the project. It is my recommendation that you authorize and award a contract to Earthworks Paving for this work.
Any questions of the staff, please?
Steve, it looks like we're not going to be able to get this project off the ground for a bit. How long is that price good for when we start on this part?
This is actually mostly in Peary Park, and I do anticipate them starting work. And
This is only on the other side of the river.
It's only on the other side of the river, that's correct.
Beautiful. Done.
Can we get them out there right away?
Tonight?
As soon as we get contracts signed and working with Red Tree on getting access to use part of their parking lot to stage out of, yes.
Nice.
We want to see those concrete trucks running through the parking lot. Roads blocked off. Detours.
Isn't PG&E doing enough of that for it?
Backup alarm, a lot of backup alarms. I want to hear a lot of backup alarms.
Make sure the exhaust doesn't
Quick
smell
question.
too bad.
Question for Steve. Steve, are you concerned about any of the lopsided numbers as far as in some of the areas that are just not even close? Is it?
In all my years of experience, it's always that way, and I've never made any sense out
Welcome
of
to
it,
the
to be honest
business.
with you. It's just how the contractor, a lot of it's they front-end load it to get the items that will be done earlier, get paid more money up front. Some of them spread it out evenly. Some are straight up. I don't have an answer for you. And my experience is it's the bottom line price is all we're really looking at.
Right, and it could just be the strategy of when the draw comes and how much money they can access.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's also that Earthworks does a lot of work within our city, too. I think that they look
They
at...
do. I think that's why ultimately the lowest.
Their mobilization
Their
must be
mobilization
real- yeah.
doesn't reflect that in the bid, but anyway, their mobilization is easy for them. So yeah,
Mhm.
and they're a good contractor.
Okay. Is there any members of the public who would like to address this issue with us? Is there any member of the public that understands what we're talking about?
I'll approve the contract unless Richard has something to say about it. Also, Ed, don't forget the slapping yourself in the forehead with the palm of your hand factor with the bid. So
Worried about that handrail, you know, it's one rail is 50,000, the other one's 5,000, I just wondered what I missed. Go ahead, Mr. Lippy.
Okay, yeah, my name is Richard Lippy. Good evening again. All these names are respected contractors in their field, and I was really happy to see Earthworks as the low bidder on the project. I had an opportunity to work with Earthworks Paving back in 1989. I think they were in their infancy then, but what impressed me about them is they had all the right equipment and they had all the right guys. And I've watched their work over the years, and I love the way they run a job, and I'm really happy for the city of Capitola that they're the low bidders and you know, in line for a contract. The only thing I'd like to suggest here maybe is that with all due respect to Earthwork Paving, issue the contract but pull the demolition part of it. There's a $30,000 gap between the engineer's estimate and Earthwork, so pull the demolition from Earthwork and give it to the engineer that made the estimate. And you can save $30,000.
I wish.
Thank you, Ruth. Okay, council.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Wharf to wharf. Stay in your house.
Move approval of the contract.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay.
Oh, do we have any update on the video? You brought that up last time. Internet video?
Larry.
Oh, yeah, I'm just really curious.
I'll let Larry explain this one. I think he's the best
Okay.
person for the job.
I saw you walking back and forth, so I was just curious if...
What specifically?
Making it work.
Well, it is working online right now. It's right now we're having some sound issues on the TV.
Well, how about audio issues online? I'm hearing us, but there's no hearing online.
Oh, I was just I'll have to check. We checked the online, and we're trying to figure out Community TV had put in some new equipment and something isn't working right with the chart. Our old equipment died. So they put in, and for some reason the audio levels are not correct for Charter right now.
Right.
And apparently we're brought our the music on our scroll is working fine. So we know we're getting audio out there. Something from the mics over to the broadcast facility isn't working. But we did check that it is online and we are hearing it there. So we're going to have them in probably tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay.
Before we close the meeting, I'd like some closing comments from Peter, who traveled all the way from that faraway land of Santa Cruz to visit us this evening.
Our ambassador from Santa Cruz?
Ambassadors from Santa Cruz.
We're going to reverse public comment right now.
Why not?
I really haven't been following lately what you guys been doing, so I gotta have to get back into things and maybe make a proposal.
Okay.
And
You're the only one who hasn't been. Just want to let you know that.
okay, so yeah, I think I mean the way Airbnbs are charging money and taking away rental housing. People, rich people are buying places and making into Airbnbs, taking housing off the market for individual people who work and live in this area. So it seems to me hostel is still a viable proposition for the Rispin Mansion, because it would be open for everyone who wants to visit this area, and as a low cost, because I think Capitola is pricing itself out of the low cost market for visitors, and also school groups, and because one of the big users for hostels are school groups, and those will be first time users that will come to Capitola, and that's what we put up, and we put up a lot of young people, and they come back, and they return, and there's much wider. So it would be kind of a big net that you put out, and get people to come, the first-time users, because right now you're caramelizing Capitola, basically. I mean, it's getting to be a very expensive city to visit. And it seems to me that having a hostel, which is definitely a viable option for Rispin, would expand, really market this town for your next generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Capitola. And speed limit in Capitola is 25 miles an hour. Please observe that. If you get stuck behind one of these council members, you will be driving 25 miles.